Steven Spielberg might have changed the modern movie more than any other living director. He's able to captivate an audience, sell tickets, make great movies, and most importantly, do it consistently. A little less than 2 months ago, I dissected Jaws, and looked at why the movie works so well as a horror film, some of the messages Spielberg was saying when he made the movie, some of the techniques he used to make it so great. And one thing I wanted to do was look at Jurassic Park, and look at some of the techniques Steven Spielberg used earlier in his career in Jaws, to see how well they held up in Jurassic Park. Although I will be touching upon that element, the primary focus of this video is to be looking at what Spielberg did in Jurassic Park to make it the best that it could be. When looking at Jurassic Park, we are going to be focusing on a few different elements. First, we are going to look at the film thematically, and look at some of the messages Spielberg was saying when he made the movie about greater society. Then move on and look at it on a technical level by examining a few scenes, and look at what Spielberg does to make this movie work so well, before wrapping it up by discussing the element of CGI. At this point, I'm issuing you my spoiler warning. So if you've somehow managed to navigate the past 23 years without seeing Jurassic Park, make sure you don't make it go to 24 years. This is a movie that everyone should see, and honestly, make sure you watch this as soon as possible. But let's talk about the biggest themes in this movie. They really aren't subtle in terms of how they are laid out. In an overly philosophical discussion between Dr. Malcolm and Dr. Sattler, Malcolm lays out his rendition of what happened biologically to get to that point.
God creates dinosaurs. God destroys dinosaurs. God creates man. Man destroys God. Man creates dinosaurs.
To which Ellie jokingly responds,
Dinosaurs eat man. Woman inherits the earth.
Obviously, the second part of the conversation was said jokingly, but when looking at this conversation, it brings up a point about free will. For the mass majority of human existence, religion was the primary driving force. In fact, atheism wasn't recognized until the 1960s. So, this conversation acts as a secular view on the shrinking importance of religion in society. I don't want to get overly religious in this video, but it is worth mentioning that Michael Crichton, the author of the book, does believe in God, so I think that this conversation, which also exists in the book, serves as a warning, and a warning about people putting too much reliance on technology and entering a world which we are not familiar with. However, the theme of reliance on technology is brought up throughout the film. One thing that Hammond wanted to do was create a park with as little human interaction as possible.
You can run this whole park from this room with minimal staff for up to 3 days.
Ideally, everything, or almost everything, would be automated. However, when things start to go wrong, he justifies it by saying,
When they opened Disneyland in 1956, nothing worked.
To which Dr. Malcolm responds,
Yeah, but John, if the Pirates of the Caribbean breaks down, the pirates don't eat the tourists.
He builds up this emphasis on computers, yet when we see technical problems, bad things begin to happen. With just a simple virus, the entire park is shut down. There is some debate as to whether or not this is about Y2K, but I think that it shows a problem with technology in general. For decades, people have been building up new technologies, and yet they can only go so far. And this movie happens when these technologies go too far, like in this early scene. We see a new way of finding and studying dinosaurs through a computer, but as Dr. Allen points out, these new technologies might make life easy, but it is unnatural, just like man playing the role of God. However, the biggest theme in this movie is that of money, which is somewhat fitting seeing as this movie was the highest grossing movie for the majority of the 1990s, and yet despite this film's tremendous success, its message towards capital is somewhat negative. We never really learn John Hammond's true goals. Is he making this park for science, or for his own monetary gain, or for the more likely reason somewhere in between? However, his devotion to creating this park blinds him from looking at it objectively. In this scene, when they're discussing the morality between bringing dinosaurs back to life, the scientists fight John Hammond on this. However, the businessman takes his side. Regardless of why he made it, money was clearly on his mind. Many times he repeats the line,
Spared no expense. Spared no expense.
thus showing that there was an economic thought involved. And as we learn, it was okay to spend a lot of money because he knew he was going to be getting it all back. And although Hammond may pretend like money isn't an issue he is worried about, he certainly does bring it up a lot. But let's move on and discuss the technical side of the film. Let's start by trying to break down the reason that Steven Spielberg's movies feel so human. And the simple reason is that they are all centered around people. All of his movies that involve something that isn't human still have people as the biggest emphasis in the movie. Jurassic Park is about people trying to survive on a dinosaur-filled island. E.T. is about humans helping an alien. War of the Worlds is about people surviving an alien invasion. The same can be said about all of these movies. At the center of Steven Spielberg's entire filmography is people and their relationships and their bonds. However, he employs inhuman plot devices to help tell his stories. And let's examine that within the opening scene. After we hear John Williams' amazing score, we see a group of Jurassic Park employees receiving a new dinosaur. And needless to say, this event goes horribly wrong. What we see is people dealing with the dinosaur. We get this shot of the dinosaur's eye amid all the chaos, but besides that, we only see people. Just like Jaws, Spielberg held back in showing these creatures to help strengthen the human element to his story. This scene is able to show the power of the dinosaur, even though we only see a fraction, a very small one, of its entire body. We see the force of the employees trying to stop it, but it clearly isn't working. The other important thing to note is how many people we see try and stop one dinosaur, and still are unable to do anything. Just like Jaws' introduction did 18 years earlier, the first scene is able to set the tone and tell the viewers that the beast we're about to see is one that we are not supposed to be reckoned with. Let's fast forward a bit to the Tyrannosaurus Rex sequence, one of the most notorious in the entire history of movies. After we see the goat's death, we know that something is going to happen. There used to be a goat in the T-Rex pin, now there's not. Now that we know that the T-Rex is going to come and attack them. And what I love so much about this scene is what Steven Spielberg does to build up suspense. So, let's go to the Hitchcock bomb theory, in which he says,
"The essential fact is to get real suspense. You must let the audience have information."
And that is exactly what Steven Spielberg does. You know a T-Rex is about to attack, but you don't know how soon, how many casualties there will be, or anything else that could happen. This scene is true suspense building. You see the dinosaur, and you know that there is nothing the characters can do. This shot of the fence shaking shows the force, but without showing the dinosaur, allowing us to build up our own mental image of what the dinosaur looks like. The introduction of characters also has some significance. As the saying goes, you'll never have a second chance to create a good first impression, and in this film, we see a bunch of really great first impressions. Think about the best characters throughout cinema history. Usually part of the reason we love them so much is their introduction. So let's single in on a few introductions that Spielberg gives us in Jurassic Park. The first character we meet is Donald Gennaro, a legal representative of the Genetic Mutation Corporation. What we learn from him is that he's out of his place and only concerned with the financial benefits that the park can bring.
We are facing a $20 million lawsuit.
We see that he's clumsy and we really don't like him. That isn't to say we hate him. He isn't a tremendously terrible bad guy, but he isn't a good guy. We don't like him and we think that something bad is going to happen to him. This directly contrasts with Dr. Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler, who are seen working where they are most at home, in the field. This first scene of them shows that they're hardworking, get along well, they're smart, they're funny, and all around are perfect characters. They're there for us to like, care for, root for, and love to see on screen. Later in that scene, we meet John Hammond and have another character to root for, but not in the same degree. He's fun, but he isn't relatable. We're not drawn to him in the same way that we are to Alan and Ellie. He has a sense of power to him and a sense of superiority. He's excessively rich and he appears to be in a different league. With that in mind, we still like him. Although we may not be rooting for him as much, we still want him to succeed, although there is something fishy about him. That's all we're going to discuss in terms of introduction, but next time you watch the movie, pay attention to every character's introduction and see that they are all great. From the soundtrack played when we meet them, to how they are framed, it's all significant and it's all great. The entire movie is full of great and innovative ways to build suspense. However, going through scene by scene would be pretty redundant, especially because of how similar Spielberg's technique is in each of these scenes. He shows that there is danger, he shows that danger, and then shows people's reaction to that danger. Spielberg was able to do this so effectively, and let me just say that there's nothing wrong with him reincorporating his style and his technique. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, and this is certainly not broke. But let's move on and talk about computer generation in this film. This movie is a milestone for computer generation, and for good reason too. Despite this movie coming up on its 23rd birthday, the CGI looks just as good as most movies we see today. This may puzzle some people. How is that possible? Are films regressing? Well, no. Did people forget how to use CGI? No. Then how come this looks so much better than this? The simple reason is 2 words: Steven Spielberg, and 4 techniques he uses. The first is what I like to call the monkey see, monkey do technique. The second is his use of obscuration. The third is his use of distance. And the final one is using it sparingly. But first, let's see how he uses monkey see, monkey do. This goes back to his human storytelling techniques. In this scene when we first see the Brachiosaurus, what do we see just before? A look of awe and amazement on a speechless Laura Dern and Sam Neill. They know how impressive this thing is, and that makes us know how impressive it is as well. This is the same technique that sitcoms use to play laughter behind a joke that isn't funny to try and trick audiences into thinking that that joke actually is funny. The difference is what we're seeing in this movie is absolutely amazing. In every scene with CGI, we get a character to tell us how to feel, whether that be fright like in the Tyrannosaurus Rex scene, or awe in the one that we just looked at. In addition, Spielberg shoots all of his CGI dinosaurs with something covering them up. This helps to really hide the flaws. For example, in this scene, the tree somewhat covers them up, but a much better example is the T-Rex scene, in which we see rain and fog help hide it. It's also shot at night, so the vision is even more obscured. Moreover, the distance from where he shoots the dinosaurs also has some significance. It's rare that we get a close-up shot of any dinosaur, and most of them are from a distance. This works just like obscuring them. It makes them harder for people to see flaws. These techniques allow Spielberg to cheat technology that wasn't up to snuff. He was able to use smart and innovative techniques on his own end that made the technology that was not there, he made it rise up a few levels. But the best technique he uses is his abstinence of using CGI. There are only a couple of minutes that feature any CG at all. Most of it is real effects, whether that be animatronics, puppets, or something else. The human eye is great at detecting what's fake, so when we see something that's CGI, it becomes obvious that it's not real. But when we see something that's real, like an animatronic, then we know that it is real. Today, CGI is remarkably better than it was in 1993. Today, we can create entire worlds, and it's only improving as time goes on. The technology still isn't perfect, so when a director comes along and is able to hide it as well as Spielberg did, it makes the movie look even more authentic and real. In conclusion, Jurassic Park is one of the most significant movies that shaped CGI in film. But in addition to that, it shows how much talent Spielberg has as a director and as a storyteller, with his ability to put so much emotion into his characters and narrative. So when looking at Jurassic Park, we can see that it exceeds not because it has a massive budget, but because it's a film with great characters, great scenes, and most importantly, a great director behind the camera who employs simple techniques that make his film great. So that's my 2 cents on why Jurassic Park is such a great movie, and I would love to hear yours. So drop a comment and tell me what you think of this movie, leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe so you can join me next time, in which we're going to be dissecting a scene from Whiplash. That'll be up next week, and there's going to be a link to that on the right of the screen. On the left is going to take you to my dissection of the film Her. Check one of those out if you like, and if not, thanks for watching and have a great day.